Be seated. Court recognizes the presence of the defendants, their counsel, Mr. Ashton, Mr. Wiggins. Mr. Ashton, please call your first witness.
I'd like to say good evening to the court.
Good afternoon,
Good
Mr.
afternoon.
Champion.
Would you just begin by stating your name, and then please feel free to make your statement to the court.
Okay. Yes, my name is Robert Champion. I'm the father of Robert Champion. And as I sit here and listen to many of the testimony, I was hearing the young guys, what he called his brothers, that played in the same band and tried to put on the show. Many of them saying that how good and how nice Robert was. Would do anything for you. Young man said that Robert helped him to get a job on campus in the cafeteria so that he could enable him to help finance himself through school. I hear another young man saying that they were childhood friends, grew up together, played in different bands, trying to make each other better people. And to have to say I'm sorry because we got you on the bus, we beat you to death. I don't understand it. Now, sometimes I wonder what would happen if Robert would be here today if it didn't happen. If he had to live, if he had an opportunity to follow his dream, to teach, to be in front of kids, to teach music. If he had an opportunity to do that, what would happen if he had to live? Now we saying, you live, Robert, and you go up. How many more young people will have to go through that bus C tradition if he had to live? How many more would have to say this is a tradition, this is just what we do, just because it's a tradition? How many have came through that bus seat, that one kick, one stomp from losing their lives? I seen a young man got up earlier today say, well, I was in the band, Florida A&M band in 1965, 50 years ago. And I went, it was going on then. Here it is, 50 years later, and it's still going on. If my son hadn't lost his life, would this tradition still go on? What happened to all of the accolade that these young men got saying, well, we went to church. We were good people while we was young. What happened to it when you got on bus C? Where was the church at? The goodness that the parent taught you at home, that when you go away or leave, you take that religion with you. Where was it? If my son have not and lost his life, this tradition would still be going on. How many more kids would have to lose their life, not only on bus seat, but across the country? And then there are times when we need to say enough is enough. Because it's not just at Florida A&M, it's all over the country. Even when a school turn their head, knowing what's going on in these schools, knowing what's going on in their band, and fail to do anything to say this is enough, well, this got to stop. Somebody needs to stand up now. You made a choice. This choice you made, it turned deadly. Maybe you didn't mean to, but it was a choice you made. And you have to be held responsible. If he had lived and we put these young people that think that a tradition should go on, we get them in high school in front of young kids. These kids act these one that teaching them, how do you get brotherhood? How do you get closeness? And then the day we ask why high school doing what they're doing, why is hazing in high school? Because we're not standing up saying it's got to stop. So I'm asking the judge to set a precedent. Too many lives have been lost. And we don't stop it now, try to do something, there's gonna be more lives. My heart go out to you, each and every one of your young men and your family. But I just want to encourage you that sometimes a setback is a setup to come back. And when you come back and be successful, you tell your story. That it's not worth a tradition of beating and kicking and the tradition of just what they call hazing. It's got to stop. Thank you.
Do any of defense counsel have any questions for Mr. Champion?
No, ma'am.
Okay, go ahead.
Good afternoon, Mr. Champion.
Good afternoon.
Just on behalf of my client, would like to know, do you here today forgive Mr. Golson for his participation?
Okay, I just mentioned that I wish them all well in what their future are. But a setback is a setup to come back and do something positive.
Right, thank you.
Anything else, Mr. Britt? Yes.
Good afternoon. Please state your name, and then you may go ahead and give your statement.
My name is Pamela Champion. I go by Pam. I'd like to thank the courts for the opportunity to speak. I've heard a lot of witnesses come in and to make comments about the young men that are sitting before me. And I feel like I have to say something about Robert and who Robert, my son, was. A lot of the things I've heard witnesses say about the people here are the same kind of things my son was. And by the way, his birthday was July 13th in 2011. So he would have been 4 months into being 26. But I just wanted to bring to the front and show everybody something. Everybody see the sign up here that's deeply engraved. It says equal justice under the law. And I looked at that sign the first time I came into this courtroom. And I could see how it was deeply edged and engraved into the ceiling up here at the top. But I also noticed that that sign was the same color as the wall. And I wondered, if this was such an important statement, why is it the same color of the wall? So I approached it like this. It looks good. It even reads good. And if you say it, it sounds good. But it really has no meaning. My son was the second born. He was my only son. And Robert had a kindness about him that he could always sense when his sisters, he was in between his older sister and his younger sister, but he had a sense could sense whenever something was not right with me. Even though sometimes I tried to hide, he would always could tell. Robert never hesitated. The time he would come down here and do the band camps, his birthday was, as I stated before, July 13th. We never spent his birthdays with us. He would always come down soon after July 4th for the band camp, and I believe it started around the 8th or the 9th. So he spent for the last 3 years his birthday over at the campus doing the band camps. But the last year that I had all my children home with me together, at my place of employment, we do a lot of volunteering in the community. And for several years, I had volunteered for the Peachtree Road Race that we have each year on the 4th of July in Atlanta. In 2011, I made the choice. I signed myself up for that road race because I said it's time for me to get out there and run. I'm always cheering others on. I'm going to run. I signed up Robert. I signed up my oldest daughter, and I signed up my youngest daughter. I tried to get my husband to participate, but he wasn't having it. But I said, we're going to do this together. They moan and groan and complain and wonder why in the world that I signed them up. So that morning, we all was ready to go to the race, and we took a picture of me and my children. And everybody, believe it or not, was excited. We went to that road race. We ran the race. Of course, my oldest daughter and Robert were out front. My oldest daughter's hung with Robert for 3 miles. It's a 10K. And she begged Robert to just wait on me, Robert. Stand and wait on me. But if anybody that really knows Robert, he had his own mind. So he ran on and told her he wasn't going to stop. And he did. So he did. He came in first. I came in second. My oldest daughter came in third. The youngest one came in last. And we all said at the end of the race when we all got together that we're going to do this every year as a family. That was the last time I had my children, all of my children together. So in 2012, I signed up for that race again. And in that race, I carried Robert with me because he wasn't there. And I didn't get to see his laugh and his smile at the end of the race as I did that first time. And somewhere in the process of Robert being in the band, he had a picture that he sent me. And he said, "Mama, this picture reminds me of me." And that's the picture that someone took at the game, where he was actually bent down looking at another little boy. The little boy looked like he couldn't have been no more than 5 or 6, but he had on kind of a purple drum major outfit. I mean, not a purple, an orange drum major outfit. And he said, "The little boy went the wrong way, Mama. He was supposed to go the other way, but what he did, when I stooped down to him, we were facing each other." And he said, "Mama, it was almost like I was looking at myself when I saw that image, when I saw this little boy in front of me." Because Robert saw his first band. I took him to his first parade when he was about 5 years old. The band he saw was the Morris Brown Marching Wolverine. I think that's who they were. And when he saw the drum majors, he said that's what he wanted to be, because he thought the drum majors, he called them gentlemen. And that's because of the outfit they had the long tail in the back and the hats that they wore. So he grew to love music. But Robert was always not only just about music, he loved to dance. Always, since a child, he always loved to dance. He took a stab at singing, but he found his niche was in the music. And that is where that's what he wanted to do, was to teach children music and to come back and be at his alma mater school, a band director to teach music. So Robert did that. Even while he was in school, he would always come back to the high school and help with their summer camps. School with their performance on the field, help sketching out formation that they build on the field. Robert was a master at playing that clarinet. And I know in some of the trials people have made comments about him playing the clarinet, but he mastered it. He was a great musician. And he not only played that clarinet, he played a saxophone and he played a drum. And yes, Robert was brought up in a church just like all of the other ones that the witnesses have said. But the difference is that you have to admit, you can't say Robert struck, hit, humiliated, abused. You can't say he did that to anyone, because he didn't. In fact, which is very little known, I had to sit and listen to a young lady when I went to pick up his things from where he was staying, which proved to me a hard thing for me to do than I ever thought it would be. And as she sat there bawling and crying and telling me about the world of the Marching 100, she said, "Miss Champion, there was very few of us that didn't take part in that ritual that we call, that is called the bussy." She said it was very few of us that participated in that stuff. And she said, if it wasn't for Robert, I don't know how I could have not been in part of it. She said, because it was so hard, because it wasn't peer pressure. It goes beyond peer pressure to what those students had to endure if they did not want to be a part of the violence that was condoned at that educational institution. But she would come in from any of those practices distraught, and she would go into the calf because that's where Robert worked. And she would sit down, and Robert would sit down and talk to her and console her and assure her that she could do it. This is a lady I didn't even know until this day, just like a lot of you who say I was his friend. A lot of those that was on the trial that say I was his friend. I listened and I thought, to hear the gentlemen, each one of them, come up and to express their condolence, please know I have no hatred for either of you. I have no hatred for anyone. I don't waste my energy on hatred. What I look at is what's true, what's fact, what should be known and be looked at. I don't bury my head in books. I look up and look at what makes sense. A family, if you call yourself a family, and if you love someone, you don't hurt, you don't beat, you don't kick, you don't stomp, you don't try to make yourself better, you don't look down. So look up that meaning of what a family is. To hear that within that marching band that we were a family, we were a friend. I wonder, how do you treat your family? For those that feel like this is the only way you can bond with me, any of those Greek organizations, sports athlete, whatever, because it's infested in everything. Because we continue to choose to ignore it. We continue to pass it over. And you wonder how the word hazing was attached to it. You wonder how hazing has existed all this time. And the reason why is because you don't look at what it actually is and what it does to people. The young man said, I've seen people that went through the bus C and they were fine. They was walking around. They were fine, but they weren't fine. Because there's a mental piece that is affected by the hazing. And yes, you're right. There are some people that are forced into hazing or being hazed. I know several people that I've met who had the assurance, in one case, of their football coach in high school that nobody was going to bother him when he went to camp that summer. But he was wrong. That young man is still suffering today, even so much he considered suicide. So this is a very serious, serious thing. But you know what hurts the most? The first time I came into a court before the previous judge to hear what they basically said, well, what this person did was minor in killing my son. The only thing this person did was held his hands, his arms behind him in a bear hug. And I kept sitting there thinking, is this for real? You take the only thing from a person to defend themselves and you say that's minor? Knowing Robert's character, everybody say, well, Robert, he wanted to do it. Robert agreed to do it. He went on his own. And I really find issues with that because there's no proof. There is no real documented proof. No one has heard Robert say that. What you have heard that's been said over and over and over again is that Robert agreed this was given to you by the people that killed him. Now, consider your source. But yet and still, to have the previous judge, and I do hope I have that opportunity to sit down and talk to him, because he's part of the problem. To really should have never sit on the case at all. Who should have morally just not even been a part of any of those cases, considering where the conflict of interest because of what pending things he was doing. That hurts because, like I said, equal justice under the law. And I know people might say, which was what I was told once, you need to talk about your son and tell people about your son. That's what you need to focus on. But you know what? This is too important to overlook any more. That same previous judge felt a desire to inform us about his hazing venture. Totally inappropriate. And I'm not saying anything now that I will not say in front of him. But it's that kind of mindset when a question is put to a person who has gone through hazing, who knows what it's about, who have been through that ban and know what that is about and that hazing, and you have people that have gone on in the educational arena teaching students and feeding students into that ban, knowing what it is, and you didn't say anything, you're part of the problem. If my son, my husband said it so eloquently, who has never participated in any of the hazing, if he was alive, nothing had happened. They went on and did the Florida Classic, which I'm sure is a money venture, but they went on and did the Florida Classic, headed back to Tallahassee. It would still be going on. That's why there are laws that need to be put in place. A school should never govern themselves. And you want to know why? All you have to do is look at what the situation is right here. These young men was excited when I heard them say that, when they went down to that school and started that school. And somewhere along the line, they lost all the things that they were taught. And just like my husband said, when they stepped on that bus seat, they want to give you the impression that, you didn't have to if you didn't want to. What is it about that ban that causes you to forfeit all that you know is right? So much so that you hold back. The key here is not about what you do or what you did. The key here is tell the truth. I have yet to hear that. Tell the truth. So that you can honestly, when you say, I want to help somebody else, not be in my shoes, that's what you mean. And the only way you're going to do that is you can't stand before high school students, middle school students, because it's in middle school, and university, and try to convince them, don't do what I did, until you admit the truth. And if you ever been in front of students, they'll pick up quickly whether you're telling the truth or not. There is so much to be said. There is so much lost here. But there are people that are missing from being in this court. People people who are not being held accountable for what they've done. That's that educational institution, the people at FAMU. They created what you see here. They condone it because they did nothing. They do what all educational institutions do very well. We have a policy. But when you have your own administrative, that's part of the problem. How effective is that policy? They didn't come to this school. They didn't start out in that school to be killers. And yes, that's what it is, because you killed somebody. So you are killed. And the blessing that you guys have that you don't even realize is you got lawyers sitting next to you that's doing everything they can to get you off or a lighter sentence. And they can plead your case and talk for you. My son didn't have that privilege. There is no one that's speaking on his behalf. In fact, you know very little about him. The people who know him know where he stood with what was going on in the band, you know. If you were honestly his friend. So to sum this up, you have to ask some questions. What have we learned here? What really have we learned? Have we learned the dangers of abuse, hatred, beatings, kicking, vengeance? Have we learned anything? There are people here right today that are part of organizations right in this room. What are you doing to stop it? There need to be tough laws. And let's just be honest, there need to be federal laws. Laws that are with teeth in it to deter it. But then there needs to be educations as well. And I do understand that Florida has put together some online education. Ask yourself with that question again. What have we learned? How effective would that be? It's amazing how you have a educational institution and they never sit down and say, what we are doing, is it effective? What do the numbers say? I don't look at it as one gentleman said, it was just an accident. You have to ask yourself, if you have a bus load, and we do know that some of the people are still out there today thinking they've gotten away. It's not about man's law at all. It's about God's law, because you're going to have to answer for what you've done. But you have to ask the question is where do we go from here? What are you doing to end it? At home, every time I see a Florida license plate, a chill goes through me. Every time I see a car that have the FAMU emblems on it, a chill goes through me. And I think about the band directors and the people that I know, that my son knew and respected. I asked that question, if you knew, why didn't you do something? What do you think is going to happen if you never address it? It just gets worse. Now is the time to send a strong message. I have no ill will towards any of these young men. All those 11 defendants that came before them, they should be sitting right here with you, because they are just as guilty as you. The administrative should be sitting here with you. Anyone that fed students to that school to be in that band and knew what was going on, they should be sitting here too. Everybody has to be held accountable. It is up to us to stop it. It is a mission. We created a foundation, the Robert D. Champion Drum Major for Change Foundation. The mission and the goal of that foundation is to eradicate hazing, bring about the awareness, and then in it. We are all part of the solution if we choose to. If you're not part of the solution, if you're not about opening your mouth and saying no more, this is not a deadly disease. It's a changing of the mindset. Hazing do not exist. And we might as well drop the word hazing because it doesn't apply. You cannot murder and kill, stomp, abuse, all the things that you do under that word hazing and look at it lightly. There's something wrong with that. Something very wrong with that because it's not lightly. Close to 20 people have lost their life to hazing since my son's death. And every time I hear of just recently, the last time we was down here, a young man was drowned on the beach at a weird hour in the morning. And what I heard was the school is going to investigate this. A school should never govern themselves. There's a lot that can be done. You just need brave souls to stand up that says no more. And for those that say, well, I'd like to go into school and speak, we have to be careful who we put into those schools to speak to those students. We have to know what that mindset is. We are all responsible for the next generation that's coming along, for the next student, for all of these children. We are responsible. I take it personally whenever I hear a victim losing their life because of this that they call hazing. I think somebody said running up, pulling somebody's pants down, making them look funny. No, that's not what we have here. We have a word that has been put on top of crimes, vicious crime, a word that put on top of it that makes it seem like it's nothing, it's just lightly. Come on over here, let me slap the back of your hand, and then you go away and don't you do that no more. A strong message needs to be sent. We have to be honest with ourselves. So when I look at this sign up here, and you guys, thank God you don't know my full story of what my family have been through with this case. But somebody's mission will be to stand up and tell the truth. That hasn't been done yet. Somebody will. But until that time, I will continue to fight and speak out against hazing. Continuously speak out against it. Because you can no longer look at this as it's just a child's play game. This is serious. People are losing their lives. People are being mentally affected the rest of their lives. I know these people. I've met with their families. I've talked with them. And to know that it could happen to any one of you in this room. And yeah, peer pressure knows no age limit. It knows no age limit. So you can't put that out there. Peer pressure happens to everybody, even in your workplace. So the bottom line is, I run every year with a picture of my son pinned to my shirt now. And some days I run harder than others because it depends on how I'm dealing with it that day. And we don't want to even say that day, that minute, that second. But a cherished life was lost. A life that has continuously been disregarded in this judicial system. But my mission is to help others not have to be sitting in my place. Not have to sit here and hear and see young men doing, their lawyers doing everything to try to save them. Or be in my shoes where my son can't be saved. And no one hears who Robert is. No one knows the kind of person he was. I thank the courts for allowing me to speak. And I may have said some things that might have been offensive to people. But this is hard. This is a battle. This is a war. People's lives are at stake here. So you can't be soft and mush. You have to be hard to tell the true facts about what is being done. And then you have to turn around and look at yourself in the mirror and say, if I know, and I know what's going on, and I say nothing, then you condone it. You have to ask yourself, what is it about that band that anytime you start mentioning anything about that band, everybody clams up? There's something wrong there. Use your common sense. Thank you again for your patience. Thank you, Judge Roach, for the opportunity.
No further witnesses, no further argument?
No, just no further witnesses.
Okay, go ahead.
When you're ready. Earlier this morning, a fine gentleman testified, Lieutenant Colonel Armbruster, who was a friend and mentor to Mr. McNamee. And he talked about having conversations with Mr. McNamee before going off to FAMU. I asked him, I said, well, did any of that communication include hazing? And he said, no. That's the conversation that we need to affect, right there. That conversation is going on in thousands of homes in the state of Florida this summer. And every single one of those conversations need to include hazing, just like they talk about drinking on campus, just like they talk about safe sex, they need to start talking about hazing. We're halfway there. We've gotten people's attention that hazing has serious consequences to the victim. But if that conversation ends with, well, what happened to those young men? And the answer is, well, they got probation. That's half the message. I would submit in this case, in order to get that message across, to do all that we can to make sure that hazing stops. And those conversations are where it has to stop. The only way to do that is to send these individuals to prison where they deserve to be. I would submit that my recommendation is a guideline sentence per the guideline score sheet provided to the court. Thank you.
Anything further from you, counsel?
Yes, yes, ma'am. If I may?
Go ahead.
Your Honor, we've heard a lot of talk this afternoon and this morning, and Mr. Ashton just capped it off by talk about sending a strong message, presumably by extolling out a harsher punishment, more significant prison sentence. Well, the last time I checked, we have a law in this state that indicates if you shoot someone, you're looking at a mandatory 25 years to life in prison. I think based on latest news reports, we're having a banner year for shootings in the state of Florida, especially in Central Florida. We're breaking records, despite that very harsh penalty being on the books. There are laws in the books in the state of Florida mandating a 25-year prison sentence for unlawfully obtaining a bottle of pills. Yet we have people doing that every single day. So what should we be learning from that? That's just increasing penalties in and of itself is not going to solve anything. That doesn't mean punishment is not appropriate. But I think we need to be mindful of what it is we're trying to accomplish. And what is it we're trying to accomplish in this particular case? Stop hazing? Well, there's been a war on drugs forever. We haven't stopped drug use. We are going to potentially have an impact on things. And I think we need to be mindful of that. Now, how do you have an impact on the hazing problem that's apparently rampant in the country? And candidly, I've been was searching for the words and for a way to effectively get that message across. And honestly, one of the things that I was afraid of is that I was going to be falling woefully short in that regard. Well, I have to tip my hat to Mr. Cearnel, because candidly, his testimony during the course of this hearing this afternoon, for me, crystallized the point that I was trying to come up with the words myself for to effectively relay the issue. And the issue is this: we're focusing, all of us that have been talking, are focusing on this problem from the perspective and the mindset and the viewpoint of an adult. The problem is, we're doing that trying to have an impact on the mindset, viewpoint, and actions of youths. And we can't expect young people to think and see things as we do. As you get older, you experience more. You've been hurt. You've been scarred. Those are life lessons that you gain wisdom from. And you learn how to deal with situations as a result of that. We've heard from a lot of people in court today about all of these defendants. With respect to Mr. McNamee, we've heard descriptions of how he's respectful, polite, caring, responsible, talented, selfless, giving, concerned about others, has a lot of potential, derives pleasure out of helping and pleasing others, especially his loved ones, and a variety of others, both in court today and in the contents of the 110 letters of character that we had submitted to the court in advance. And he sits before the court as a 24-year-old young man with no prior criminal history. Now, I could sit here and tout all of his good blessings, good omens about himself, but most of those descriptions really fit everyone in this room that's a defendant, and candidly, most, if not all, of the people who have been charged in this case. Now, these aren't bad people who set out to hurt someone or commit a crime. These are people who were friends. I think the uncontroverted testimony, both today and previously, is that these individuals were all friends. Now, but again, why did they do what they did? Well, they're looking at this from the mindset of a young person. And I can't be the only adult in this courtroom who understands that when an adult tells a young person something, they're going to be paid lip service to it. But a lot of times it's going to go in one ear and right out the other. Why is that? Well, because young people, unlike us as adults, they think they're immortal. They're going to live forever. They're Teflon. All the bad stuff that happens to other people. That doesn't happen to me. I think of all the stupid stuff that I did when I was young. That now, at this age, having a son at the same age that I would be horror-stricken to think that he would have potentially gotten himself in situations like that because of what could potentially happen. Now, I know that now. That wasn't the mindset that I had at the time. If we want to have an impact on this issue, we need to have it expressed to young people, explained to them, made real by people they can relate to. Not people twice their age, 30 years older than them, or just seeing something on TV. Because if we hand down a sentence today and send all of these people to prison, you know what's going to happen? There's going to be a big headline. There'll be a news story tonight, and that's going to be the end of it. What we need to do if we want to have an impact is have these people who have gone through it, lived it, experienced it, and who are in the same age range of the folks we're trying to have an impact on, talk to them, interact with them, let them touch them, let them hear directly from them what happened, what was involved. That's what's going to make it real to young people. Not a bunch of adults telling them, you can't do this. Because candidly, that's going to go in one ear, out the other for the overwhelming majority of them. Now, there's also been a lot of talk today, Your Honor, about punishment. And punishment, just so that we're all on the same page, isn't just going to be what's contained on the paperwork these gentlemen are going to receive at the end of the hearing today. There's punishment above and beyond that with respect to all of them, and we've heard it today. All of these gentlemen have now been found guilty of felony offenses. That does not go away. Your Honor can hand down a sentence. Your Honor can time serve everyone. They've been punished in that regard. And that's something that, to some clients I represent and that other attorneys represent, may not be that big of a deal. But we have a group of gentlemen who are before the court today who were trying to make something of their lives. Their parents saved and scraped. You've heard these gentlemen having worked hard, some of them obtaining scholarships to go to college. These were gentlemen who were trying to focus on their future, do the right thing. Again, with respect to Mr. McNamee, he's got no prior criminal history. Their life dream, Mr. McNamee's in particular, of graduating from FAMU as a member of the Marching 100, is gone. No chance of recovery. Now, some people may laugh and think that's nothing, but these are real-world consequences they are suffering. And anyone who is looking at this from the outside is going to acknowledge this. That in and of itself is going to potentially be sending a message. You know, the reality is the life path of everyone on that bus that night, and everyone involved in this case, has been irrevocably altered. These young men, a lot of them who are proud, intelligent individuals, have had to face their families with the fact that they've now gotten themselves in a situation where instead of going off to college and making their families proud, what they've done is basically cause pain, sorrow, and turmoil. And that's not to say the families aren't going to still be there to support them and love them and hope that they do the very best. But when you have gentlemen like these who have very important aspects of their life devoted to family, and they now have a sense of failure to them, that is a punishment. So I don't think that we can forget that. And this is all things that I'm sure the court is likely aware of, but sometimes it gets lost in the minutiae, and I think it needed to be said. Now, the court, and I've said it to a lot of people, I've really come to not like this case. And I say that because regardless of where you turn, who you look at, there's nothing but tragedy. There's nothing but tragedy. And as the case has progressed, those tragedies have increased. Now, the question is, what should the court do? Again, I don't think if the court were to sentence them, which we're not expecting, to time served this afternoon, these gentlemen have far from just gotten off at this stage with a slap on the wrist. But what I have laid out, Your Honor, because candidly, I think Florida law, under the circumstances, falls woefully short of providing any real guidance. Now, the court, in this particular case, as previously, has made a determination that there is a basis to depart below what would otherwise be a mandatory sentence in this case. Having done that, Your Honor, at this point in time, has basically unfettered discretion in crafting a sentence that you think is appropriate, punishment, and appropriate to fit all of the other and address all of the other concerns. What I've laid out in the sentencing memorandum that I generated and submitted to the court was a suggestion to look towards federal law. Under federal 18 U.S.C. section 3553, it enumerates factors which should guide the court in determining an appropriate sentence. 3553 indicates as its guiding principle, the court shall impose a sentence sufficient, but not greater than necessary, to reflect the seriousness of the offense, to promote respect for the law, to provide just punishment for the offense, and to afford adequate deterrence to criminal conduct. And the factors that are laid out for the court's consideration are the nature and circumstances of the offense and the history and characteristics of the defendant. Well, in this case, the history and the characteristics of the defendants involved, I think, as has been shown through testimony, is positive. Is their involvement in this situation inappropriate, uncalled for, should not be accepted and deemed appropriate? Yes. And again, we see that clearly from the perspective of adults. But I think Mr. Cearnel crystallized the viewpoint, and he agreed. It's not an appropriate viewpoint, but it was the viewpoint he had 4 years ago when he was a student at FAMU. The other issue, actually two prongs, need for the sentence imposed and the kinds of sentences available. I think they actually need to be spoken about in conjunction with each other in this particular case. We've already touched on the fact that the court has basically unfettered discretion. So the kinds of sentences available could include incarceration, supervision, or some combination thereof. But what are we trying to accomplish? Everybody wants to send a message. Well, we can go ahead and take the easy approach, send these guys off to prison for the better part of a decade, pat each other on the back and say, we've done our job, message sent, work done. Or we could work and craft something that will truly have an impact. Mr. Cearnel touched on it in his testimony. Mr. McNamee touched upon it in his. I believe Mr. Golson did as well. These gentlemen are in a peculiarly unique situation to be able to speak directly to young people now, while they're all still young and relatable, based on what they've gone through, not what they've read about.